Right, so now we're moving to Kate Graham. Kate Graham is from the UK. She's been involved to a greater or lesser extent with lesbian feminism since coming out in 1975. So she's going to give us talk about feminism, environmentalism, and what she's been thinking about in terms of politics. Thank you so much, Kate. Over to you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. It's a real honour and a privilege to be on this along with Lierre and Susan. And I don't know if I can measure up to their presentations, but I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about radical feminism, lesbian feminism, and to share some of the ideas and thoughts that I've had over many years now. I wanted to, let me just open that door. I wanted to talk about the context, the environment, if you like, of our working together and our consciousness and our action, our women's rights activities such as they are. I mean, I came into radical feminism through lesbian feminism, and we had a little, radical lesbian feminist group in Edinburgh. And, you know, back in 1975, you know, we really sort of asked ourselves, what did we mean by our lesbianism, you know? So the thing is, you know, we asked ourselves, what did we mean by lesbianism? And we questioned everything. And I really don't see that now in today's, you know, queer groups at all. That, you know, we explored the boundaries of friendships. We questioned what it is to have a sexual relationship. We questioned obviously monogamy and you know, things like that, and marriage and whatnot. And you know, it was very, that was what informed our understanding of radical feminism as well. You know, it's like, what is possible? You know, what can we do with this world, and what are the possibilities of remaking the world? Yeah. Now it seems to me that we all have to do that really quite urgently, if we're to address the really frightening and alarming situation that we find ourselves in, that Lierre and Susan have drawn our attention to. Yeah, and that's what I don't see happening. Look, it seems to me that we all come to our feminism through different routes. Lots of us come, like myself, through lesbianism. Many women come through experience of rape or sexual violence. Many women have come, particularly to this you know, platform, through our shock and horror regarding the trans agenda. And you know, some other women come through issues at work. Women come through, you know, divorce. Women come through difficulties getting custody of kids. Women come through not having access to education or career opportunities, all sorts of different things. Women come through trying to escape controlling men, whether they're fathers or brothers or husbands. We all arrive at some sort of one of the facets, one of the faces of feminism. Look, it seems to me that as radical feminists, our job is to be the hub that connects all these different aspects of male supremacy as we experience them. And in order to do that, we've got to be able to work together much better than we're able to at the moment, you know. So I want to ask those of us that are watching this who are radical feminists to begin again to ask ourselves about how we propose to have a feminist revolution. When I was, I think, 18, we had a conference in Edinburgh called the Radical Feminist Theory of Revolution. And to my mind, it was the first time that radical feminists and revolutionary feminists at that time had got together to try and envisage how we could bring about feminist revolution. And, you know, I don't think that we've actually made much progress. So, you know, I think we really need to, because let's face it, men are not going to change this. Men are not going to change this situation, and patriarchal structures and patriarchal ways of working are, I think, inadequate, never mind insufficient. So we really have to begin to understand how we can work together on this. It seems to me it's quite evident that male organizations and structures are hierarchical. Men are comfortable when they know where they are in a hierarchy, and that's how their setups work. And we as women are working relationships and social relationships are very, very different. I mean, we used to discuss this stuff. We had the lesbian feminist journal called Ethics that was briefly published back in the second wave, and we had one called Gossip as well. I think that was we questioned how we communicate and what respect and what sense we make of what we say to each other, and I think we need to do that. Now, obviously, it comes, our understanding's got to come from consciousness raising. It's got to come from examining our own lives. The personal is political, yeah. It means that what is happening in our lives is, and our experience is informed by our experience of power and control. Now, D. Graham wrote a book called Loving to Survive, which I think is under-read and under-acknowledged amongst us. And it's basically, her thesis is, as I understand it, that Stockholm syndrome can be extrapolated to, enlarged to include a whole class, and that is what we've done as women. We've all experienced male control and male threats and male power and abuse by men, and we have inculcated, we've accepted, we've now, understood that men as a class have that power. And this affects our understanding of, everything, basically. I think we have to be brave, and it's absolutely crucial, if you haven't done so, that you must read Mary Daly's Gynecology. I don't read a lot, but that is absolutely fundamental. We must read it because that is one of the books that exposes the universality not only of patriarchy and male power, but of men's hatred of women. It's not just that men control us, it's their hatred of us and their spiritual, if you can call it that, their death worship, their I can't possibly put it better than Mary Daly. I'm so glad that Lierre managed to find that quote there. It's just excellent there. Thank you. We've got to start with that, right? We've got to start with of the realization of the universality of male supremacy across the world throughout time, right? Throughout patriarchy. And we've got to start thinking to ourselves, how are we going to deal with men? How are we going to deal with them in the future, assuming that there is a future for us to have? There are ways of thinking that, Susan and Lierre have talked about that quite well. Thank you. Their ways of thinking are seriously fucked. Come here. Excuse me. Come here. Come here. Excuse me. Sorry. Come here. Good girl. Come here. Good girl. Yeah, their ways of thinking are seriously fucked. I mean, Plato, who, more or less invented logic, and logic is based on him saying a thing either is or it is not. This whole idea of a boundary between something and another thing. And every woman who's experienced pregnancy can see the flaws in that. I mean, this is male thinking, and male thinking is not going to solve our problem. I mean, there are things that I respect very much. I respect science. I think that rational thinking is really important and incredibly helpful. And analysis is, has to be based on some sort of understanding of logic and reasonable thinking. But it's not enough to take us through what we face now. We have to step up. We have to take part fully, and probably take over, actually, in order to deal with the climate emergency and catastrophe that we're seeing at the end of the American empire and the fall of capitalism here. Yeah, thanks. I'm getting distracted by the chat. So there are some wonderful writers here, apart from Mary Daly. Of course, I want to draw your attention to Summer Brodribb, who Spinifex published, must be 30 years ago, 25 years ago now, who did a book critiquing postmodernism called Nothing Matters. And it's a really deep, difficult, demanding book. And she was an absolute genius to do it. And I'm so glad that she did. But she's kind of disappeared. And this has happened to a lot of women from the second wave and since then, right? It's not only about how we can work together, it's how we can sustain each other. I've lots of friends from the second wave who are not around now. They're all off making money, hopefully doing well, dealing with their lives and their individual solution, And I'm sure we can all think of lots of us can think of women who were very active and who fully understand some aspects of the situation that we live under with male supremacy, but who are not active now and who are not involved in any campaigning work or any sort of women's rights activism. You've got women who you would expect to be very acutely aware, a lot of women working in women's aid, for instance, who are hook, line and sinker with this trans bullshit, and what the hell's going on with that? Why? I can see someone talking about economics there. Let's do that. So I'm distracted with the chat. Sorry. So let's look at economics, right? I was mentioned briefly there. We've got an economics based on market price, right? We need to transform that. That needs to be completely shifted to an economics based on value somehow. And there are maybe 5 or 6 things I can think of off the top of my head that account for value. There's a resource value. There's the energy content value, the input of energy. There's the replacement or irreplaceability value. There's the environmental cost in terms of what is to every aspect of everything that we buy and use and trade. This should be a massive thing. Feminism should be massively engaged in reinventing economics right now. And why isn't it? Where are the feminist economic? As far as I'm aware, they're little moved on from wages for housework. It's pathetic. It's just not good enough, So my sort of plea is that we all can learn how to involve each other, communicate with each other, and educate ourselves in these different realms, in arenas, in order to try to come to make sense of it instead of this. How the hell we're supposed to do that, I don't know. I know everybody's exhausted. I know everybody's just spending our times playing whack-a-mole, dealing with the bloody violence, that we're faced with every day. Okay, so the problem with that is that when we're doing that, when we're responding to the situations that we find ourselves in, we're getting criticism from other feminists, aren't we? To take one of the recent things, we've got a lot of prominent feminists criticizing Woolf in America and some anti-trans activists here for doing lobbying work and legal work with men who are lawyers, who have previously worked with right-wing organizations or Christian organizations, and with women who are not feminists. Look, a huge part of women's rights activism is involved in changing the law, right? That's why it's called women's rights activism, you know? So these people think that changing the law is a good route to take in order to try to protect women and advance our opportunities in education and work and housing and legally and all the rest of it. So of course they're going to lobby with other people who share their single issue campaign goals. You know, it's not acceptable that feminists deride and berate each other when we're all trying to do what we see as the best thing in order to promote women's our agenda. You know, it's fine to have the debate and the discussion. I'm absolutely for that. But these kind of soundbite, throwaway, bitter, sardonic criticisms, these Twitter, assaults, lobbed like bloody grenades or something, it's not doing anybody any good whatsoever. We desperately, urgently must come together. We've got masses of work to do. I mean, look at geography. Look at geography. You've got political and social geography. Anybody who's ever tried to live with a bunch of other women knows that, you can't find housing to do that. Housing is not set up for that. Housing is set up for the nuclear family, right? And, large scale kind of more, I think of them as organic collections of, social housing. They're just not being built. And the cities and the towns and the various places that we try to live are completely inappropriate for us. They're completely inappropriate. And I mean, anybody who's ever tried to live in a flat with a bunch of people know that even if you started off being best of friends, you'd be arguing and you'd be having conflict before too long because of the pressures of that. So, for us to find a way forward, right? How are we going? What environment are we going to make culturally, socially, spiritually, physically with each other so that we can actually work toward a solution to the mess, the crisis that we find ourselves in? That's what we need to do.